Pangolino, the GEC, is going to have new information for us this morning. But, I'm going to make the ask, like they say. It's 7:14. Farron Taijeron, the Guam Guy. You can follow him on social media. He's the Guam Guy. He's also part of the KUAM Podcast Network. Good morning, Farron.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
That's it, my man. So we got a new episode. I got a clip. So maybe not too much spoiler alert, but if you could tell our audience what this latest episode of the Guam Guy on the KUAM Podcast Network is going to be about.
Sure. This episode is about the super happy, fun topic of pollution on Guam, but more importantly, what we're doing about it.
Right.
So a small group of friends and I started doing some what we call extreme cleanup. So rock climbing with rappelling gear, diving for trash and stuff like that, all that kind of fun stuff. But for a bit more of a purpose, I suppose, than just straight up having fun and getting outdoors, which is great to do by itself, but also getting out there and cleaning up the island we love.
There you go. So I'm going to play this little clip. It's a snippet of the latest episode of the Guam Guy podcast, which you can find everywhere fine podcasts are found on the KUAM Podcast Network.
Well, on the note of people with skills, we'll talk about a little bit more about that toward the end of the show. So I'm happy we'll say that. But yeah, sticking with you here, our last escapade together, we did. You had called me, and because you had said you found a ghost net over outside Hilaan, or outside of Lost Pond. You want to recap what that call was about, or what that call was like?
Sure, I think if I can remember. But okay, so it started last year. I think it was May. My family and I went out to Sharks Pond, and I went snorkeling, and I found the net. And I thought, okay, we're going to have to come back and get this, but not today. We can't do it today. We're not equipped. And so I called you later, but I think it was months later, just because it just got really busy. But then you suggested, yeah, let's go get it. And I was so pleased that we could arrange to do this. But you also introduced the idea of extracting it, not just carrying it back on the beach, on the coastline, but extracting it, loading it onto kayaks, and then bringing it back. And that I thought was interesting, and it actually turned out to be a lot of fun. So I really, really enjoyed it. I'm glad you suggested that.
It was slightly less fun for me because I forgot to bring gloves, and you brought gloves for everyone,
right?
Except me.
You could have asked.
I didn't realize.
I had extras in the kayak.
Yeah, I didn't think about it. I don't know why I didn't think to ask if anybody had brought extra gloves or anything like that. But yeah, I wanted to bring the kayaks because I did not know how much junk would be stuck in the nets and how much weight that would be. I didn't know how long it was. So like how we're going to manage, like, right. Are we going to carry that back on our backs? So I thought the kayaks would have been just a good safety measure to have, or even just a practical approach to bring it back. Mm-hmm. If you recall, I got video of that, and I'll just pull that up right in a second. Arriving at Shark's Hole, or Hilaan. Our mission today is to remove a ghost net. We got to Shark's Hole and quickly found the net was broken into multiple segments, and this one was definitely the longest section. The water was clear enough, and the net was so gunked up you could easily see the segment from above. Now here's the problem. We have all this beautiful coral like this one with a puffer hanging out inside of it, and right next to it we have this net stuck on live coral. Sadly, most of the ones we found stuck in the net were dead. Some of it was still white, which shows the death was recent, and some coral was actually still alive and just barely hanging on. In any case, we took our time with the tedious work of removing all the live and dead coral. It was slow going, but we did the best we could. The net had obviously been out for a while and had plenty of time to get fouled up. Sad to say, this is at least the third net I've helped pull off the reef just this year. Yeah. Will, growing up in the water, how does that make you feel?
It's really awesome seeing these projects go down, and like it's not just snorkeling, right? It's not just freediving. It's like freediving with a true purpose, and there's something that's really like fulfilling about that, especially when it comes to something that you care about, like the ocean, something you really love. To be able to go out there and like give back to her, you know, like help her out when there's people out there who aren't doing that at all and are actually leading to these detrimental issues. Teching is that's a sore issue for me because yes, it's a very common practice and it's very easy to harvest from a tekin. But if you're not responsible for it, you end up with situations like that where, you know, man, maybe the guy had like a couple ends of the tekin fouled and he just said, oh, never mind, I'm just going to leave it there, without any consideration of what the causes of destruction would be afterwards, you know. And like for somebody else to find that, I only wish that the guy who owned that tekin could see the problem that he created, you know. And maybe it could just be an education thing, but hopefully that kind of like would open up his eyes and like highlight like, hey, just because you left it there doesn't mean it just disappears from your eyes. It's going to be there for all of us to see. But yeah.
And yeah, usually we think about fouled nets and like dead sharks or whatever, or dead fish, but like, you know, if you like reef fish, then you better like the reef and you better like the coral, because that's why they're there, right? And so look, if you can just see how much coral is like just tangled in that. Some of it was still had a little bit of like living tissue, so it wasn't completely dead, but like that's just a lot of very, very unnecessary death.
That net was still like attaching itself to pieces of the reef, but there was a time where when it was more intact, it was far, far more detrimental, especially when all these fish end up getting caught in it and then larger predators come into feeds. You're looking at a very degraded net. I'm sure that there was more death and just absolute destruction associated with that net. Not just when you guys found it, but when it was still fresh and the holes of that net were still able to catch fish. I'm sure there were plenty of fish that had died and were caught trying to eat off other fish that were inside that net.
And not only that, but you know, this is just one net. And I used to think it was, you know, you hear about it being a major problem around the world, and I never thought it was a big deal here. But then now that I think about it, I'm pulling a net off of the reef every few months, and they last basically for forever.
Right.
Right. Yeah, is that true, Jenny?
If they're plastic, yeah.
Okay.
And then when they do eventually degrade and get into pieces, and then you get your microplastics and all of that, and that's the problem. So this net, I thought it had lead weights. It didn't. They were actually plastic, hard plastic, and that also is a problem because of, you know, eventually degrading into microplastics, which are making their way into our to our food source, the fish and so on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think the cultural aspect of tekin is, yes, it's gigaos and stuff like
Right.
that. That was very cultural back in the day. But if we really want to revert to, you know, like tapping into that actual cultural side of it, instead of using plastic, we really should consider fiber nets, you know, and perhaps not full-on tekins. Gigao, if you get a chance to look up gigao, it's essentially this containment.
Fishing wear?
Sorry?
The fishing wear,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was used to contain fish. You wouldn't actually like catch and kill them. You just keep them all in this one area, and you know, the ones that you didn't want wouldn't get stuck and die. They could just throw them off. Those tekins, it's anything gets caught in there. If you're not on top of it,
Right.
and that fish doesn't have an ability to escape, it's gone. So you're pretty much harvesting stuff that you don't even care to eat.
Well, I think there's a law too that limits the amount of time that you can leave a gill net out. Is it, I think it's like 2 hours.
Something
4
like,
hours,
yeah,
something like
that.
Mm.
And you got to be on top of it.
Yeah.
Like when I was younger in high school, we'd tuck in behind my friend's property, and if we were off that net for like an hour or two, we'd have like dead baby sharks in there and just things that like we weren't gonna eat that, you know, like that's. And it was actually my first time ever techining, and when I saw that, I was like, I don't want to do this, man. You know, like this is evil. But if you do it right, you can be very productive. Otherwise, it can be far more detrimental and do way more damage than you expect.
Latest episode of the Guam Guy. Kind of, I think I hit it on the head, Farron. Eco, adventure, environmental coolness. Yeah. You know, and so I know you're talking about Shark's Hole there, but are there other areas, Farron, where you think we need to do like a massive cleanup, maybe with not just you and your crew, but other people getting involved?
There is trash all over the island. I'm very sad to say, but it's also true. So yeah, absolutely. There are plenty of places that could use some love and attention. Toward the end of the episode, I actually talk about that too, where so far the cleanups that we've done has just been just me and my friends, because the stuff we do is best done with the smaller groups, and we're also still kind of just figuring things out, how to do things most safely, and we've figured out quite a lot, I would say, of the places we've done. So we'll start doing some more open cleanups. So we'll invite public out. Sometimes we'll control the numbers, sometimes not. We'll work with partners who would be willing to do, if KUAM wants to lead a cleanup, I'm happy to support it. And so on. I got Kevin Nace from the Guam Overhang Club, who says he's down to provide his own expertise to cleanups, and I'll just handle the cleanup side. He'll handle the climbing side. Will Naden, who was just talking there in the video, shouting out his own cleanup, which he started when he was 19 years old, July 3rd, Reso Pure Project.
Right.
Divers come out.
Yeah, it's great, Farron. Keep up the great work. And again, if you want to do that cleanup, I'm down. Let's make it happen.
Okay.
Thank you, my friend. And you can find the latest episode of the Guam Guy, as well as all of our other excellent podcasts, on the KUAM podcast network. It's up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all over the place. Yes, Farron?
Yeah, please watch this one. This one, more than any, is super visual. A lot of videos in this one. There was like more videos playing than the audio doesn't even talk about. So watch this one on YouTube too.
Right. Yeah, Farron, I got to give you props, man, because this, I love what you're talking about, but what I love more is the way you present it visually, right? You're a great visual storyteller, and we're just so humbled and grateful to partner up with you for this podcast network.
Thank you so much.
Stop it some more, right? Okay, Farron, have a good weekend, my friend.
You too.
There you go, Farron Taijeron. He's the Guam Guy. You can follow him on Instagram at the Guam Guy. All right, and check out a lot of the great stuff he's doing in that latest episode of the KUAM podcast network. It'll be up all over where our fine podcasts are found. Again, like I said, Spotify.